Hello and welcome to our SC16 interview series. I'm Tiffany Trader, Managing Editor of HPCwire, and I'm here with Paul Messina, Director of the United States Exascale Computing Project, and he's also a Distinguished Argonne Fellow. Welcome, Paul.
Good afternoon, Tiffany.
I think we have a lot to cover here today because the Exascale Computing Project has made some big announcements here at SC16. But before we dive into the specifics of those announcements, and the 3 funding rounds you've awarded for the Exascale Computing Project so far. Why don't you share a few words with us about why Exascale is important? We're hearing a lot of it here at SC16 about why HPC matters. So why does Exascale matter?
Well, it's basically for the same reasons that HPC matters. In the history of computing, as one gets the ability to do more calculations or to deal with more data, you're able to tackle problems you couldn't deal otherwise. So a lot of the problems that over the years we first could simulate and validate with experiment perhaps in 1 dimension, we're now able to do it in 2, 3 dimensions. With Exascale, we expect to be able to do things at much greater scale and with more fidelity. In some cases, we hope to be able to do predictive simulations, not just to verify that something works the way we thought it would, to discover new things. So an example of that would be discovering new materials that are better for batteries, for energy storage. So Exascale is an arbitrary stepping stone along the way that will continue, just as we had gigaflops and teraflops, peta, and so on. Exascale is one along the way, but when you have an increase in power of, let's say, a factor of 100, chances are that you'll be able to tackle things that you can't tackle now. Now, even at this conference, you will have heard of people saying, here's a phenomenon that Exascale is not good enough for. So that indicates that it's just a stepping stone along the way. But we have identified dozens, literally, of applications that are important, problems that can't be solved today, and that we believe with Exascale capability, we will be able to solve. Precision medicine is one. Additive manufacturing for very complex materials is another. Climate science, carbon capture simulation, for example. Those are among the applications that we're investing in.
Great, and I think we're going to get into those a little bit more
yes,
in a moment.
I shouldn't have gotten into this.
No,
yeah.
that's great.
That's
I'm glad
right.
you did. So we first learned about the ECP in February when the DOE budget request was announced. Can you give us an overview of the project and its mission and the significance of it being a project as opposed to a program?
Absolutely. Let me start with the project part. There have been research efforts and investigations on Exascale since 2007. That's 9 years ago. At the point that it became a project, it indicates we really want to get going on it. And the reason that it's a project is because there are so many things that have to be done simultaneously and in concert with each other. So the general outline of the project is we invest in applications, and I'll expand on that a little bit later. We invest in the software stack. We invest in hardware technology, in that case with the vendor community, the people who develop the technologies, so that those technologies will eventually land in products that will be Exascale systems and that will be better suited to our applications. And we also invest in the facilities from their knowledge of what works when they install systems. So those 4 big pieces have to work together. It's a holistic approach, because if the software is developed independently of what the applications need, it probably won't fit the bill. And so the project, because it's a project, will have milestones. Research programs don't normally have milestones. We'll have many milestones, some of which are shared between the applications and the software. So if application A says, I need a programming language feature to do this kind of calculation more easily, express it more easily, then we want the compiler and programming models part of the software to try to address that. But then they have to try it together. If it doesn't work, try again. So that's why it's a project, because we have to orchestrate the various pieces. It can't be just invent a nice programming model, tackle a very exciting application. They have to work together to be successful at Exascale.
Right.
Same thing goes with the hardware architecture, the node technology. the system technology. I don't know if that covers the general outline of the project.
Right. And the mission to stand up.
Yeah, the mission is to create an exascale ecosystem so that towards the end of the project there will be companies that will be able to bid exascale systems in response to an RFP by the facilities, not the project, but the typical DOE facilities at Livermore, Argonne, Berkeley, Oak Ridge, Los Alamos. There will be a software stack that we hope will not only meet the needs of the exascale applications, but will also be a good HPC software stack, because one of our goals is also to help industry and the medium-sized HPC users more easily get into HPC if the software stack is compatible at the middle end as well as the very highest end, then it gives them an on-ramp, and so we want to have that. And a major goal, of course, is the applications we're funding to be ready on day one to use the systems when they're installed. As you know, these systems have a lifetime of 4 to 5 years. If it takes 2 years for the applications to get ready to use them productively, half the life of the system has gone by and before they can start cranking out the results. So part of the ecosystem is a large cadre of application teams that know how to use exascale. They've implemented exciting applications, and that will help spread the knowledge, the expertise.
And so just as we're talking about this, I think part of the project that often gets the most attention is this mission to stand up, I believe it's 2 capable exascale machines in the 2023 timeframe. But as we were just talking about, the ECP is so much more. It's about the applications and the co-design and the leadership team and all these different elements, right, that you just talked about.
That is correct. So I'm very fortunate to have a great leadership team. I have Stephen Lee as deputy for the overall project lead with me. He's from Los Alamos and has decades of experience. In fact, I worked with Stephen when I was leading ASCII in 1999-2000.
Wow.
In the applications area, there's Doug Cothe from Oak Ridge, who has great experience. He's worked at Livermore, Los Alamos, and Oak Ridge. He recently led the Castle project, which is just won an R&D 100 award, for example. Fantastic experience. His deputy is Bert Still from Livermore. Again, several decades of expertise, key roles in applications development. Rajiv Thakur from Argonne is the lead for software. His deputy is Pat McCormick from Los Alamos, and Jim Ang from Sandia leads hardware technology with his deputy John Schau from Berkeley, and Terry Quinn from Livermore leads exascale systems with Susan Coughlin, from Argonne. In addition, I have Julia White, who is integration manager, because integration and co-design, which is really what I was describing, the pieces have to work together and be integrated. And so Julia helps along with everybody that I've already named. So I have this team because it's a project and we work very well together, but I'm really happy to have so many good colleagues that I can work with on this.
Great, fantastic. So you had 3 funding rounds so far. Your first funding round was in September. Under that one, it was a $40 million funding round that funded 22 application projects. And there were 2 more major awards announced at the show here.
Correct.
We had a $34 million going to 35 software development proposals and $48 million for 4 co-design centers, which I'm sure you can tell us a little bit more about that. Would you like to share a little bit more about these funding rounds and the importance?
Certainly. Yeah. To me, we're finally getting things going, which makes it very exciting. The reason we were able to make these announcements is the culmination of about 9 to 10 months of requesting white papers initially, then full proposals, and evaluating them in all those areas: applications, co-design, and software technology projects. For the applications, as you might imagine, we tried to hit mission needs, critical mission needs in Department of Energy, as well as other things of interest to the nation. We've funded 22 initially, but we're hoping to fund a few more as well. Those will be 4-year initial funding grants for the full proposals. There are 15 full application teams and 7 seed ones. So 4 years to develop the application. Each of them has identified a specific challenge problem. So we're not just funding somebody to do better materials simulation, but better material simulation and a very challenging goal that they believe they can actually achieve with their software once they have a system to run on, an Exascale system. In co-design,
Four co-design
the 4
centers.
co-design centers, again, we'd like to fund more. They're fantastic proposals. The 4 that we selected each are addressing a methodology or computing motif. So these are not like the co-design centers that DOE has been funding over the previous years, where one was for combustion, was for nuclear energy, and was for materials at extreme conditions. These are on methods. So one is on particle and cell methods. Those methods apply to fusion simulations, to cosmology simulations of how the universe evolved, for example, and several other simulations. So to have good particle and cell methods implemented in very good software will impact many applications. Another one is on adaptive mesh refinements for block structured meshes. That one is led by Berkeley, for example, Berkeley National Lab, John Bell, and there are many applications of the 22 that we funded, as well as many others, that do adaptive mesh refinement. There's one on mesh generation for unstructured grids, which again, most classic physics problems need to do. And then there's one on data analysis led by Ian Foster at Argonne, because so many applications now have to deal with massive amounts of data from sensors, from accelerators, and be able to analyze the data, make sense of it, and learn from it. So those are the 4 initial co-design centers. They also have a 4-year initial lifetime. They and the 4-year applications may well be extended another several years, but we thought 4 years was a good initial period. The 35 software technology projects cover, as you might imagine, the spectrum of the software stack. You know, we have things down at the low level of operating system for very fine-grained operations, like threads, because as you know, with Exascale, you'll have hundreds of millions of things that have to be done simultaneously to take advantage of Exascale. And so you'll be doing very fine-grained calculations, usually implemented in threads, so you can't have a lot of overhead in using the threads. Up to several programming models. The most commonly asked question about Exascale software is, what's the programming model going to be? And the answer is more than one. And but we do know MPI will be used in some fashion at Exascale without question. But what about some asynchronous task models? So we're investing some in those. In global partitioned array application or models, we're investing in that as well. So initially we're investing in several things in the programming models. We're investing in compilers as well, in tools for measuring performance, for debugging, in visualization. You usually have to visualize to understand the data, in data storage, and efficiently being able to manage lots of data with parallel I/O and so on. That's why there are 35 of them that we're funding now. And I don't want to neglect the fact that part of the project, which got started a few months ago, is also inheriting some activities that the NNSA labs, the National Nuclear Security Administration labs, which are Los Alamos, Livermore, and Sandia, those had gotten an early start on certain things associated with Exascale. And so they also have on the order of 20-25 software technology projects that are part of our overall project. In some cases we're overlapping, but by merging, not by duplicating. So software is very complex. The software stack is very complex, and that's why there are so many of them. So these software projects that we just announced, 35 of them have a 3-year lifetime, and many will be extended. But because in areas like programming models and in workflow models, we don't think we know which are the dominant ones or which will be the dominant ones. We're investing in several, and we may weed some out later.
Okay, great. Let's circle back to the application funding round. I'm sure it's really difficult to just pick a few, but could you share a couple of those projects that as highlights?
Certainly, and it is difficult. You know,
Yes.
it's like saying which are my favorite children, right? They're all my favorites. But you know, ones that certainly come to mind that perhaps would resonate with people have practical applications. Combustion of internal combustion engines, so automobile, truck engines. So one of the projects is a follow-on to a very successful project that was a co-design center, in fact, in the old definition of co-design, led by Jackie Chan of Sandia National Laboratories. So the idea there, of course, is to do more efficient combustion for internal combustion engines. So what are the benefits? Well, you're able to use less fuel and less air pollution. So it helps the environment and it helps the economy as well. So that one, you know, right now, that project can model fairly accurately a cubic centimeter. Well, you know, the cylinders of a truck engine is a lot more than 1 cubic centimeter. So to be able to model at scale and with hundreds of chemical reactions going on, you have to have more chemistry, more refinement. So it's an exascale problem. But that's one that I think will make big improvements in, and it will result in great benefits to the environment and to the economy. A second one, also energy related, is wind energy. You know, you see wind farms in many places these days, and by designing them better, both the individual blades of the turbines as well as how you position the turbines relative to each other in a farm, as they call them, can make a big effect on the efficiency of these turbines. So you can get 20-30% more efficiency by carefully designing the placement of all of them as well as the design of each one. Furthermore, a lot of people I've heard complain about the noise of these wind turbines, and we can make them quieter through better design. So one of the projects is for wind turbine design.
I believe that's at Argonne, right? It's going to be on the Theta or the Aurora supercomputer that work will be starting?
Well, yeah, certainly there is early work on that already. But you know, at Exascale they'll be able to do even better.
Even better.
But indeed, some of that work is going on. In almost every case, the applications are not brand new, but they've all been identified as being of high priority by Department of Energy or other departments, and of societal benefit. You know, the precision medicine one that's funded jointly by this project and by the National Institutes of Health is one that, you know, spans another agency. And of course, precision medicine for cancer treatment is very appealing and very important. We don't know if it'll be successful, but with Exascale, it sure has a better chance of doing so.
Right, we're hearing a lot about precision medicine here at SC16. Our opening keynote was precision medicine.
Right, so that's a sampling of 3. You know, there are many more.
Yeah,
carbon sequestration, you know, seismic analysis, and so on. But we don't have all afternoon.
Right. So I don't think we can talk about Exascale without talking about mentioning the global Exascale race, as it's called. The top 500 was announced here at SC16, the latest top 500 list. And China and the US each have 171 systems. They're tied for 171 systems each. And they both have about equivalent performance. The US has a slight performance lead. We're also seeing China has 3 Exascale prototypes in motion. Japan is on track for Exascale 2021, 2022 perhaps. The EU is about that, maybe 2020, around there. So with that framed, how is the US doing in terms of the global Exascale landscape?
Right. Well, first,
and could we be doing better?
Right. Well, first I'd like to mention that you know, the fact that these countries and world regions like the EU have announced major investments in Exascale development is an indication that Exascale matters, which was, I think, your first question. It's indirect evidence, but you know, those countries would not be investing heavily in exascale development if they didn't think it was useful, that it mattered. Now, the U.S. Currently has a goal for the project that I'm involved in, the Exascale Computing Project, of developing exascale capability with systems installed and accepted in a time range of 7 to 10 years. It is a range, and certainly the Department of Energy, the government, is considering an acceleration of that. Obviously, it won't be that we'll have one next year, but an acceleration that would, might be 7 to 6 years. So that is being considered. Any acceleration comes at a price. And as I indicated, this project is investing very heavily on applications, software, not just on buying something from vendors and just buying the system. So it's a big investment, but one that I think is necessary to be able to get the benefits of Exascale, to have the applications ready to use and exploit the systems. Could we, the U.S., be doing better? Well, if this project had been started 2, 3, 4 years ago, we would be further ahead. I can't estimate easily how much further ahead, but that didn't happen. We finally did get going about a year ago. It isn't clear that we would be the first country to have a system that has an exaflop system, but remember, I haven't used the word exaflop until now. I've talked about exascale. So what we're focusing on is having applications and a software stack that runs effectively in a ratio that would indicate that it's exascale. It might take 2 exaflops. So who gets the exaflop first may not be as important as who gets the equivalent of exascale. So if we have 20 petaflop systems now, 50 times more performance for the same application, then we would call that exascale. And we also have goals of not too much energy usage, 20 to 30 megawatts, which is a lot, but if we didn't have a goal like that, we might end up with 60 or 100 megawatts, pretty expensive. So I would say that you can think of it as a race among the countries. From my standpoint, as a current project director, we have very good goals, and we're planning to address them as quickly as we can and do a great job. If we are asked as a project to accelerate, we will do our best to accelerate. That will certainly require more money and more risk, but within reason, we will certainly do that.
Is one of the goals here, we haven't talked so far yet about sustainable exascale, not just getting to exascale, but making sure there's a sustainable path forward after that?
Absolutely, that's a great question, Tiffany, because I often emphasize that for the technologies that we're hoping the vendors will develop, partly with our funding, and the software stack that we're developing in collaboration with universities and industry, that will create a sustainable ecosystem. It won't be just, we've gotten to exascale, systems can be anointed as exascale, we breathe a sigh of relief and relax. It needs to be sustainable, and that's why we really want systems that are in the vendor's product line. There's not something they're building just for us, one of a kind. It needs to be part of the business model that they want to follow, and software that is usable by many different applications, which will make it sustainable. Open source almost exclusively, which again helps sustainability because many people can then contribute to it, help evolve it beyond exascale.
Well, we know that the Exascale Computing Project has a huge scope to it. We've only gotten through just some of it here today, but you've also launched a brand new website here at SC, and that website, if you'd like to find out more information, it's www.exascaleproject.com.
Very good, and I hope many people visit it. Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Thanks.